Hey guys, just before we get into it, we would like to acknowledge our podcast partners in Beyond Blue.
If you're feeling low, anxious, or need to talk to someone, please contact the people at Beyond Blue. Their phone number is 1300 224 636.
You can visit them on the website as well at www.beyondblue.org.au/get support. Enjoy the episode.
Thanks, guys.
Hello and welcome to the Lystics AFL podcast. I'm your host, John Van Norden, and here with me as always is my good friend, Shawnee Lewis. Sean, how you doing this week, mate?
I'm good. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
What's
Feeling
happening?
a little bit of repetition today. Not a lot, man. A lot at the same time as not a lot. It's a busy end to the year for everybody. I think we were just saying that there's a lot of fatigue coming around at this time of year. So it's just about dealing with that busyness and still having the space to focus on you. But I'm going okay, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, going well. Just, it's like what we've been speaking about the last few episodes is just that, running into Christmas and trying to not be, I guess, run down and give the best of myself to the people that I'm interacting with, and coming out of lockdown and everything else this year where we probably haven't seen a lot of people and interacted a lot, and probably in a way we've all learned to enjoy our own time a bit more. It's just that adjustment and remembering how fatigued you can be from that, I guess that kind of constant catching up with people and stuff, and not in a bad way. It's just taking a bit of adjustment. But yeah, no, look, it's been, my wife and I have been trying to kind of pace ourselves through this period, which I think is going a long way to helping us manage it, because it's always busy for us anyway. But yeah, being very clear with boundaries and very open about what we can and can't do is has been really good, positive discussion for us with a lot of our families. So
Yeah.
but yeah, what's been happening? I mean, I guess mental health minute we can jump into.
Yeah, it's been you already know this news, but it's been a really big, probably week mental health wise for me. Pretty much this time last week, I'd accepted another job. So, which is super exciting news. I'm feeling really lucky, but it did all come about very, very, very quickly. So much so that I sort of learnt about it. Um, that, well, the same day, so Tuesday last week, and by the end of the night, had the offer and accepted it the following morning. So then I've had to sort of spend the week resigning from my existing role, which I love, and I have a lot of people that I work with that I love, and it's been really hard from that regard. But it's probably the biggest thing, like tolling wise on my mental health, has just been the feeling of like lack of purpose. So it was very purposeful work that I was doing. I could sort of feel it all the time, that I was committed mentally, and that I knew what I had to do. Whereas at the moment, because I'm sort of in a bit of a handover mode, and my mind is supposedly coming off this role and going on to a new job. It's just about staying motivated and still feeling really positive about everything, which I am excited about. It's just about getting over this little hump in between. But exciting news, mate. I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, it's awesome news, and it's you obviously have really enjoyed the work you're doing at the moment, but I definitely know from our conversations that it's a huge opportunity in front of you, and one that you're very excited to take. So it's congratulations to you, and I guess it's a result of all your hard work, mate, and you should be very proud, and it's awesome opportunity for you. So couldn't be more happy
Thanks,
for
mate.
you.
Thanks, mate. I'm excited. How's your week been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're just, yeah, I think it's what I was saying before, just, yeah, coming into Christmas. We've got a few work things on the next few days, which will be nice. At my work, we're not finishing on Friday. Where a lot of us are working through to the 24th. I guess kind of next week's a really kind of nice week to work because you just kind of clean up everything from the year that you haven't quite got done.
Yeah.
All those things that I guess just keep getting pushed. So yeah, work through the 24th and take a couple of weeks off, and then hit next year running. But yeah, I mean for us really, it's we're getting our house ready to potentially put on the market. So it's just our weekends at the moment
Wow.
have been gardening. So I've fully planted out the backyard again, and the front yard's looking good. So yeah, I mean it's all happening really, but yeah, it is what it is, and yeah, I'm in a good mental space, and yeah, everything's going well with the leg and work and bub and wife, and can't really complain. Surrounded by a lovely family this year, and yeah, it's just nice to just sit back and reflect on everyone around us at the moment. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. That's a nice little reflection, and we are going into probably more of reflective mode in general now at this time of year because effectively it's been a hit a pause on most movement. I know there's a couple of list spots to still tidy up, but at this time of year we're typically getting into our reviews, what's happening, who's moved where, who did well, who addressed their needs, who didn't address their needs, and I guess making sense of it all. And we're going to be tackling the draft first. It's always hard to tackle the draft quickly because a lot happens, and it's important to reflect probably in a balanced way because it is the big piece of where, like, so you have the delisting and trade, obviously, but generally more players come to and leave your club via the draft than anything else. I know that there's been a bit of an exception to that this year, given the changes in list sizes and everything, but it's still a pretty important part of club's growth and going forward. So taking the time to review that's going to be important for us, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next few episodes.
pretty excited. Should be pretty good.
Should be great. Do you want to jump straight in because I know that we've got a lot of clubs to get through. We'll start doing an alphabetical order.
Yep.
But yeah, how do we feel the Crows went?
Yeah, look, so I guess we'll just run through what they did. So they had pick one. They did what I hoped they would do, which is bid on the best player in the draft, which was Jamar Ugle-Hagan. And of course, the Bulldogs couldn't hit the match button quick enough, even though the AFL made us wait 4 minutes for the match. And then with pick number two, their first live pick, they selected Riley Tilthorpe. And then they had pick 11 after bids on both Jamara and Braden Campbell shuffle picks down. So they picked up an inside ball in Luke Pedler. Out at pick 25, they traded up to get their hands on another South Australian, an outside winger who can float forward, who I was a bit shocked was still there at 25 in Braden Cook. Then they picked up an inside ball-winning midfielder 2 picks later in Sam Berry. 3 picks later at 28 in Sam Berry, and finished it off with a leading goal kicker in the Sandful this year and a pretty handy small forward in James Rowe. So how do I think they went off the top of my head? I think given the hand they had, they did exactly as we expected. They did very well. I think they've gone in with a clear plan about addressing their perceived holes in their list. So obviously they've got Rory Sloane is getting older. They've lost Brad Crouch. I think Matt Crouch is a RFA this year potentially, or maybe next year. So
Maybe.
potentially shoring up the midfield was definitely an area they needed to look at. They obviously had Jackson Hately coming in via the preseason draft, which was known about. So, in Pedler and Berry, they've gone and got two inside ball winners who will complement the midfield going forward. Pedler has been able to hit the scoreboard. He's a reasonably handy mark, and and can play forward. I'd be interested to see if he has as much success at AFL level, but he does have that IQ. The thing that they've basically got this year's, I would say, like Hunter Clark in his year. Like he, just an absolute tackling monster. Like he just lays tackle after tackle, and um, he's kind of pretty fearless and just doesn't give up in Pedler. So there's a lot of really nice traits about him. At pick 11, it probably feels a bit of a stretch. I think even I was just trying to find in the mock draft where we took him, but I know that the Draft Central boys really liked him, but I didn't think we had him even close to that high. And yeah, so a bit of a bolter, but I felt that was a pretty good selection. Even if it is a fraction early, I think he'll still play. As will Sam Berry. I think he has another lock, like a pretty good selection. Braden Cook's the one who I just love. I think he could be, out on a wing. He could just be amazing for them. And he does hit the scoreboard. Like he can play that half forward role. He can play a bit, I guess, he can kind of not only play as an outside midfielder, but he can also kind of play that Bailey Fritsch type role, where he just plays that third tall and can just hit the scoreboard, and all of a sudden you look down at the score sheet and he's kicked 2 or 3 goals. So yeah, I think that's really good. And obviously James Rowe just shoring up their small forwards, which with the news this week with what's his name, Tyson Stengel, obviously being stood down at the moment. I guess this selection really it proves its worth straight off the bat.
Yeah, it totally does. I mean, we're just on that. We had Pedler at 43 in ours, so I would definitely call 11 a stretch pick. But the clubs know a lot more about why the players are where they are in the pool. And of all of the years for people to be rated differently by different clubs, this was the year that it was going to happen. So, not surprised to see a couple of sort of more shock picks there. The other thing that the Crows did on draft night was move picks around to make those selections. So they gave up a future third and a future fourth round selection on the night in order to juggle their picks and end up with the players that they've selected. But I mean, you know me, I love Tilthorpe. You can go back and listen to my early summaries of what I sort of thought of the 2020 draft pool, and he's my favourite player all year. I love what he can do laterally for a big man. I don't think that I've seen many big men that of his size and with his level of athleticism be able to also swing onto both sides of the body, kick left and right very comfortably. Um, which just opens up your options, especially like if we talk about this with midfielders all the time, being able to exit either way from a pack because you can hit targets on either side makes a huge difference to the range of directions that you can head, and potentially because of that dual-sided nature that he has, um, he's also improved his vision laterally. And I'll keep saying laterally until that word becomes old. But that's what I like in his vision. That when you go back and you watch some of his footage, watch his ability to do things sideways of his direct line. So handball off to the side, turn out of a pack and hit a ball on a wing, switch the play. Not many 200 centimeter 18-year-old ruckmen are thinking about that kind of stuff. But he definitely is, and I'll be really excited to see him at AFL level. I think probably as early as round one.
Yeah, look, I think they're looking at it. They've probably got 4 players actually. 4 of the 5 players they took who I could see in round one. So Tilthorpe, Pedler, Berry, and Rowe could all start round one. Not saying Cook couldn't. I think Cook though a little bit lighter. So I think I mean, you know, really speculation. He could get to the club and get on with it, but yeah, I think he might take a little bit more time, but certainly an exciting crop for them. And I think as well, given the year that we've had, I think it's a really safe crop. There's a lot of risk in this year's draft, and it's really hard to evaluate. I guess we've sat here and all read everyone's grades on who did well and who did not, but at the end of the day, there's even as drafters, as recruiters, there's a significant gap of information this year. Your biggest kind of area for draft talent didn't have a competition.
Yeah.
So, effectively, you're looking at 60% of the draft, 50% of the draft. I can't remember how many Victorian players are taken, but let's call it 50%. Who haven't played a game all season. So
Yeah.
it's a really big gap, and I think that this, they've picked, obviously, I think it's 4 South Australians, so 4 blokes that have all put runs on the board this year.
Yeah.
So safe,
Yeah.
and I think it's a really good thing. Are we going to give a numbered score?
Um,
Why not?
I'm not sure. I mean, the only reason I wouldn't is because I don't have what they started with in front of me to see what they like. Because I've got those moves where they lost picks, but I don't really have what they shuffled with, which sort of matters when I'm considering a grade. Maybe,
So they started with 1, 9, 22, 23, 40, and 80 before, obviously, bids came in.
yeah,
Um, so you scrap the 80. So 1,
yeah.
9,
At
22,
the
23, and
so
40.
the two picks that they traded, I think, were poor trades. So I'm looking at them now. They in one of the trades they gained pick 25, gave up pick 27 and a future third round. So move up 2 selections and give up a future third. That's
That was about
overs.
Cook.
Yeah, that's overs. And the other one was game pick 34. They gave up pick 38 and a future fourth. So move up 4 spots, give up a future fourth. It's not as bad because it's a later selection, but it's still not good.
Did
So losing points there.
did they give up?
Pedler,
Did they give up? Because they took pick 38.
that might have been where it ended up. This
Okay.
was just the trades.
Okay.
Um, so that might have been where it ended up. But the what was I going to say? Given
Pedler.
that, and given I think that Pedler was a bit of a stretch as well, I'm going to give this a C.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Um, yeah. Look, it's a. I was thinking, yeah, probably, uh, yeah, somewhere between a B and a C for me. Um, I I I don't like doing like I was thinking it was probably like a 5.5 out of 10, which would be like a
Ah, okay. Let's just do it out of 10 then.
yeah,
I give it a 5 out of 10. You give it a 5.5.
yeah. That's yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I think that's fair. Um,
Yeah.
Brisbane up next. So Brisbane, just to make it a bit easier for you, Brisbane went in with 25, 53, 58, 69, and 70, all having points. They obviously had some NGA talent there. So their first selection was an NGA prospect in Blake Coleman at 24. Then they took the outside runner, Harry Sharp, and then followed it up with a developing ruck forward in Henry Smith at 48. So, sorry, Harry Sharp was 43. So, I think looking at him, obviously Blake Coleman has come through. He's Kadeen Coleman's younger brother, and certainly a really exciting talent. He's a small forward. He's around about 180 centimeters. Just just has the party tricks really as a small forward.
Yep.
Um, Probably there was a lot of clubs who are pretty keen on him because he's quick. And he's got reasonable endurance, and he's been inside of an AFL system this year, which is all big ticks in a draft like this. So I can see the attractiveness of him. Um, I think he's going to be a pretty handy player and could play early. Harry Sharp is an interesting selection for me. I'm not a big fan of it. I think he's not the best disposal of the ball. I think he was one of the kids that absolutely smashed the 2K time trial. So yeah, a fairly
Yeah.
big endurance beast. But I just his disposal for me is probably the only question mark. It, I guess when we talk about a few players in the AFL, so guys like Tom Phillips, Ed Langdon, these sorts of guys. What separates them from being in the absolute elite of the competition is their foot skills. Um,
So they all have at very best a pitching wedge at their disposal
Yes.
to just slice and dice with. They don't have any real penetration, and their accuracy. I know that pitching wedges are generally accurate shots, but it's the style of kicking where it's like a sweep. It gets too much air and it hooks one way or the other. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And, and that's
it's
and
never fun.
exactly, and that's I guess the thing. And look, getting him at 18 years old means, I mean, having the athletic traits, which we suggested is probably going to start to happen with these rule changes as interchange caps come down. Endurance is going to become a premium, and this is a great example of one of those selections. Brisbane's backing themselves that their system can improve his kicking, improve his accuracy, and he's young enough too. So it's not that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, if that makes sense. But it's yeah, I think it's a 43. It's worth the risk, I guess. But and then Henry Smith is an interesting one. I'm not too across him, but I know he's a fairly young ruckman, 204 centimeters. He did some nice things in his bottom age year, and everything, but I guess he's just raw, so he's just going to take time. He,
Yeah, it's an interesting year for rucks. I sort of found that the ruck quality in other years was at least equal to this, if not better. But one of the things I thought was really interesting, just generally across the board, because there was less competition, I feel like people were more willing to take bets on ruckman. There was a
yeah,
few rucks that got drafted this year, and probably because of that, I don't know what we're actually getting here. Even in the smaller players, they're just going, we might as well add a tall to our depth because it's always a good time to draft a depth ruckman.
yeah. Look, I mean, I think for Brisbane, they definitely need a depth ruckman, no matter what. They've got McInerney, Archie Smith, so they need someone else. And look, I think probably the thing with Henry Smith is that he can play forward, and it's a bit like the selection of Shannon Neal, which we'll discuss a bit later. That attractiveness is that they can play that dual role, and being able to rest your ruckman forward is going to be very attractive with obviously the reduction in cap. You don't want to have a second ruckman sitting on the bench that you're just running through the bench because that's going to take up, you know, 10 rotations a game out of your 75. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a long term prospect, obviously with a lot of rucks. But yeah, he's a big boy. Just looking at it here, he's 204 centimeters and just under 100 kegs. So he's
Yeah,
definitely
big
got the
kid.
body. So yeah, I mean, not a bad thing, and definitely fills a gap in Brisbane's list. So
Yeah,
I mean, for me, this is just spot on, exactly what I was kind of expecting. Probably maybe the Harry Sharp pick is something I'm not. I'm just having a look who went after Harry Sharp.
just while you're having a look there, the other thing that they did was that they turned pick 29 into picks 35 and 46 to gain some extra points. That was for the kid for the Coleman match, which is fine. I mean, that's a good use of trading on draft night is improving the amount of picks that you have to make a match. So for me, though, probably a 5.5. Neither really good nor bad.
Yeah, I'm probably 5, so probably the opposite of the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just having a look who came after him. I was just wondering if Jack Carroll was available when they made that selection because I knew he went around there, and I would have marked him down if they had have overlooked him. So yeah, no, five's fine. It was as expected, I guess.
Yeah. Who's next? The Blues.
Yep. So Carlton came in with 31, 38, and 78. So effectively only really two picks. They selected with their first pick, which ended up being pick 37, was the small forward from South Australia in Corey Durden. Uh, I guess he also played some midfield as well. But yeah, he's a pretty handy player. And then with 41, they picked up the player I was talking about just before, which is Jack Carroll, who was probably the surprise of the night, sliding as deep as he did. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I don't think anyone really could who had kind of speculated on the draft like we had, and the Draft Central boys and plenty of other commentators out there were a bit shocked at Carroll sliding so much, because considering he was talked about as potentially being as high a pick as, say, 19.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be really interesting. It's both these picks are really good for where Carlton's at the moment. Both guys can play next year if they have to. Durden obviously being a small forward who can play in the midfield. He's got really nice skills. He's quick on his feet. I just think for Carlton, with the forward line, they've got obviously Harry and Curnow and even Levi supporting those guys at ground level. Obviously, they've got Gibbons there and stuff, but you want kind of, without being disrespectful to Mike Gibbons, it's kind of like you want to try and upgrade that position.
Yep.
As good as kind of he is, like, he's a best 22 player. He's probably one of those guys who's always fighting in the bottom six of that best 22.
Yep.
So if you can upgrade that level, that'd be really good. And yeah, Jack Carroll, can play across half back, good in the middle, nice skills. Just really like him. He'll go on and complement their midfield very well. And obviously this year they'll welcome back Brodie Kemp, as well as hopefully Liam Stocker's back in the fold, and they're shaping up with a reasonably nice high ceiling in terms of talent midfield to go with the experience they already have.
Yeah, no, I really like the moves that the Blues made. As you said, I think value selections. I thought that Corey Durden, probably a year and a half ago, under 16s level, was one of the best kids in this year level. And I don't think that any of the kids from under 17s truly stood out last year. There were a few that were a little bit better than others, but no absolute stars. And obviously not being able to play in the top level this year meant that he's probably slid again. But Carroll, I think they were both really good selections, both needs players,
And both
and
best available at the time.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you do just need to take who's draft who's in front of you. So can't. Yeah, I don't have anything wrong with either of those selections. I actually rate them both quite highly. So for me, it would probably be a 6.5
Yeah,
out of 10.
given what they had in front of them, where it fits in their list, I'm saying it's a 6.5. Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah,
um,
I'll give him a 6.5 as well. I'll be fair.
yep, sounds good. All right.
Pies.
Yeah. All right. So your former club.
Yeah.
For those that haven't been across Twitter, John's made a stand, and very proud of him for doing it, because he basically has said that the Collingwood Football Club is not aligning with his own values, and I guess our the thing that we demand of our clubs is that they reflect our values as much as I guess our support is not unconditional in a lot of ways. And yeah, very proud of you for making that decision, mate.
Thanks, mate. That's yeah. Just on that, because I haven't actually talked about it on the podcast at all. That's all it is to say, is that at the very least, when you turn up to support your club, you are saying I support them. And I didn't find myself being able to do that with a lot of the decisions that they've made, not just this off season, mostly to do with the way that they'd handled a lot of issues stemming from Eddie, really. Racist comments and just slurs across the years that built up to a point where I realized that I couldn't accept it. I know that he's leaving, and I've said that in a couple of years I'll reconsider where the Pies are at. I mean, they'll always be the first club that I really supported, but I think it's a fair thing to say to most. Fair question for most of us to ask of our clubs is just, does this actually align with my values, or am I just putting money into a cause that I don't agree with? So that was me there, but let's jump into the review.
Yeah, well, so obviously we all know what the trade period was. They started off with 14, 16, 65, 66, 68, 75 as the ones with points, obviously having Reef McInnes as their NGA prospect. They picked up at pick 17 Oliver Henry, younger brother of Jack Henry from the Cats. Pick 19, 2 picks later, they picked up Finlay McRae, again, the younger brother of Jack McRae over at the Dogs. A bid came at 23 for Reef McInnes. They snagged Caleb Poulter at pick 30, a big outside midfielder from South Australia who slid a bit. Pick 31, they drafted a key prospective key forward in Liam McMahon. Pick 44 was Bo McCreary. And yeah, so that was a fairly decent draft haul from them.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, so on top of that, there were some obvious changes to get those additional assets. They lost their future first round pick in that, and also gave up a. So they lost a future second round pick and a future first round pick. I can't remember whether both of those are the Pies or one of them is the Western Bulldogs.
No,
And they gave.
wasn't it Bulldogs gave a second round pick and
They lost a second round pick as well.
I did that. Okay, I reckon that's
So
the
they lost
dog.
they lost a first round pick, a second round pick, and gained two third round picks and a fourth. And I think they're preparing for a bid, an early bid next year on Dacos. But they went all in on this year. It is worth noting though that to get those additional selections, they gave up more. But yeah, the players that they selected, if I was rating them for fit and availability at the time, I would say that they were all really good picks. I thought that Oliver Henry would have been a great pick this year. This is sort of the hard thing when you're picking Vicks is that you don't know where they would have gone. Had they had a full year of playing, I sort of projected both Henry and McRae being top 10. So interesting to see that they both slid out almost to probably double where I would have expected them to go if I was expecting them to be 8 and 9, 17 and 19.
Yeah,
Um, Similar with Reef McInnes, I was projecting them all around the top 10. But obviously, there was a lot of talls that came in. This is one of the tallest first rounds that I've seen in a very long time.
yeah,
So I think that the selections were all good. Paid a lot to get them though.
yeah. I absolutely couldn't agree more. Like I think we're probably going to be pretty harsh on the overall period for them, but when you talk about selections, Oliver Henry, just I think is a really good selection. I wanted him to kind of slide to Melbourne actually. So, just I guess a guy who had been kind of forced to adapt. Like I think he struggled to get midfield time, so he became a forward. He kind of plugs a lot of holes. Um, you know, got a reasonable set of wheels on him. Ran a 3 second 20 meter sprint. Um, I guess where he's going to play will be very interesting. But I mean, the Pies have a pretty adaptable lineup, so I think that he could potentially start out on a flank and on a forward flank and turn into a wingman or even potentially up back and could take pretty much next season could take Jaden Stevenson's spot
Yeah,
straight away. So it's a pretty decent one there. Next up, obviously Finlay McRae. I mean, if you watch the way Jack plays, you kind of can gather how Finlay plays a bit. He's not an identical clone. That's not fair to him, but has quite a few similar attributes to him. Just a real accumulator. Doesn't absolutely explode or anything from contests or anything, but just gets to every contest and can just hits the right targets. And I think he's probably one that suffered from not being able to show his wares this year.
yeah. I mean, we talked about it a little bit at the end of the mock draft episode, the second one. But I do feel like that's consistency which wasn't able to be showed this year, it was an underrated trait.
Yeah,
So I do feel like Henry and McRae would have both been players that would have had good, consistent, productive years, but potentially don't have. I mean, for example, Henry might not have the upside of Zach Reed, who's slightly more athletic and 5 to 10 centimeters taller.
I just think
But
it's different needs. Like Essendon needed a key defender more.
yeah, but I think that Henry could have been playing that role. Like, I mean, Henry's not short either. This is what I mean is that
Oh well,
I just
no, but Henry's 188 versus Zach Reed at 200 and something. Like it's a big difference in
okay.
height.
Well, they
You're talking about like a third or fourth defender versus a key defender.
they selected Nick Cox and Zach Reed.
So Nick Cox is again 190 something. What they're both 200.
Yeah, mate, as I said, for me, okay, excluding needs, the fact that those guys were projecting in the top 10, I believe, is because this year athletic upside was viewed higher than consistency of output because consistency of output couldn't be measured for Victorian players.
Correct. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I just think it's not the comparison. Like your Archie Perkins might be your comparison where they've picked a guy on explosive ceiling talent. Like he's you know could be anything Archie Perkins, and he's probably the guy where do you go the consistent or do you go the X factor? And that was the Essendon decision around that area. And again, like we talked about, the Adelaide Crows kind of went the opposite. They picked Pedler so high when they could have easily picked, probably Finlay McRae. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a really interesting one where like it'll be a really fascinating draft to look back on in 5 years' time. As I think we're kind of working through. But anyway, the next
yep,
pick, Reef McInnes. I love this. He's exactly the kid that the Pies midfield needs. He's a taller midfielder, really really tough, hard kind of player who will get in and get his hands dirty, and being the taller one, he gets his hands clear really well. Um, uh, he's also got some fair toe as well, so he ran a 2.8 or something for the sprint, so can get out, but he just needs to sharpen up his skills. Obviously, a lot of the contested inside type midfielders aren't the most highly of skilled players.
yep,
And I think Reef is reasonably skilled. He just needs to probably keep working on those. So
yeah,
and I guess then they went and complemented it with Caleb Poulter, who's probably more of an outside midfielder, who can play up forward at 192 centimeters. So again, another big kid, not as heavy as Reef, but he's a not afraid to get his hands dirty either. But I think Poulter is one that fascinated me on draft night. I was a bit sad Melbourne didn't get him.
yeah,
I just think that he could be something special out on the wing. He's got a beautiful left foot kick. He just his kicking is that really good penetration he gets with his kick. So you know it doesn't always come off, but it really does like open up the game for you. And I reckon that there's going to be a few Collingwood forwards licking their lips when he's got it, and they're leading up to him, because I think
yeah.
that could be very attractive. So
Yeah, the two later selections, or not, wasn't much later, McMahon, but the two final selections being McMahon and McCready, or McCreary, sorry, were both more need selections. So McMahon a developing key and McCreary a small forward. So, I mean, all in all, where do you have them sitting? I mean, I probably, given that they gave up a first and a second as a part of this, have them sitting somewhere around a five, because I know that their pick slid on the night as well, and they were able to do some good things once they made those moves. But I think that paying a first, even though it's going to be paid in the future, is still a high price to pay.
So what was the trade for what would they give up for the first? They gave their
Um,
first and got
so we got 24, 30, and a future fourth for our future first round pick.
so
So look,
24,
it's
40.
40 and a future fourth, 30 and a future fourth. So, I mean, two mid second round picks for a future first round pick that Collingwood would probably project around 10th.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Oh.
look,
Yeah, I mean, look, it's
for me, because of the unknown of this draft that it didn't make as much sense. I know that as I said, I think that that's probably going to get eaten up in points. But even if you could have shot it into the year after that, 2022, you're going to know more about than you know about this draft, just because you're going to be able to see them play most likely
yeah,
over the course of a full season. It's just a big risk on this year, and I think that a lot of it was to do with saving face after a really poor draft period.
trade period.
Yeah, it's
um,
trade period.
yeah, look, I think yeah, they gave up a lot. So I guess the part that like the bid for Reef came later than I would have expected, so they got to use both their first two picks, which I
Yep.
thought's really good. So big ticks, and their picks were all really good picks. So the first three you give three big ticks to. They've obviously given up a bit to get Poulter and McMahon in that future first, and I think you said was it a future second, or did that come later?
It was so they. Sorry, my computer just froze. Um, it was a shuffle of picks once they got those back-to-back selections. So they
Okay,
shuffled back a
yeah, I
few
guess
picks
yeah,
twice to get those additional third rounders. But 5.5 for me.
yeah,
I
look,
don't think it's much better than that.
yeah, 5.5. 5.5. I think they picked really well on the
Um,
night, and that's the thing. Like they've given up a lot, but they've picked well. So
yeah, and that's sort of like the hardest thing when you're rating all of this is because, like, I try to I try to distance myself as much from the player selected at the pick because ultimately the draft order changes where players were rated in phantom drafts and things like that because we didn't know that a club rated somebody as high as pick 11, and some clubs did, even if though they're a surprise pick to us. There are clubs willing to spend pick 11 on them, so therefore they are inherently worth more than a player selected at 40, just for the purpose of we get a few more benchmarks that come out during the draft. So 5.5 seems fair. I am happy with the moves that they made though for their list.
yeah, yep, absolutely. So we'll move on. And Essendon, who we were just talking about. So Nick Cox. So I started off with 6, 7, 8, 44. They were the points ones, and they had two NGA kids in Josh Eyre and Cody Brand. And they so with pick their first pick, they took Nick Cox, tall, key defender, utility, can play on a wing, can play forward. Pick 9, they took Archie Perkins, who, as I said, is a bit of an X factor, 187 centimetre forward mid, who just just has something that I don't think that Essendon have a lot of. And Zach Reed at pick 10, who's probably more of a key defender, but has also uh, done a little bit of ruck work and sort of and that stuff over the time. So three real utility type players who can play multiple positions there. Then there was a bid for Josh Eyre at 39, which they matched. So Josh Eyre is a key forward, which Richmond bid on. He's very quick for a guy his size, and then obviously the Bulldogs came in late and decided to bid on everyone's kids, and they bid on Cody Brand, who's a tall defender who looks like he could be all right. Just going to need a bit of time. So I um, I guess yeah, I really like this from Essendon. I think Cox and Reed they've drafted for replacing Hooker and Hurley. And I also think that they could make an impact earlier, playing in different positions. Archie Perkins, as I said, offers them something they don't have, with a real kind of, I guess, someone who can break lines and everything. And probably the one thing you would criticise, one of the bigger things you'd criticise about Essendon's midfield is it, you know, like as when you look at it, it kind of feels a little bit one dimensional because Dylan Shield is forced into the inside role because they don't have a really strong inside midfielder, which then blunts his kind of explosive ability a fair bit. So they're left to rely on your Heppels and those sorts and Parishes and these guys. So it's I think Perkins is just going to really spice up that midfield a bit. And as well, next year he can probably play up forward and potentially be a target as a third tall.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard draft to sort of rate, I think, because um, the three picks that they had, I would often refer to as the three worst picks to own because you got the first few picks of the next bunch. So if they were able to have turned one of those picks, say a pick 8, into a couple of teens picks, that they could have come out with better hands. I don't know if there was anybody shopping around, but like even if you think about the two pies picks, if they were able to turn 8 or 10 into 19 and 19 and got McRae, Henry, then that would have been a better haul. But it's always hard. I mean, sometimes you just have to take the selections that you're given, and what they actually did with the selections were select people for the future, which, given the state of their list, I think that they desperately needed some developers to start replacing players on their list that have moved on or are aging. So I and the last two picks are matches. So there's not much that they really could have done, um, with the exception of just rating the picks between 8 and 10 as poor going into the night. Not that you're going to select poor players, but just that they, for me, carry only slightly more weight than a pick, say at pick 16. So not being able to do anything with that is always hard.
Yeah, I think it's just the nature of this draft. I was trying to explain it to a mate that, you know, the difference between this draft and a lot of others is that, you know, I feel like if you had a pick from, say, probably about pick 8, pick 9, oh yeah, pretty much these picks as you're saying, maybe a bit later, um, it really didn't kind of matter too much. Like the pool was so flat that, you know, a guy like Carroll just on preference slides to the 40s.
Yeah,
Yet, you know, Geelong jumped up and grabbed Max Holmes, for example, as a just a kind of a bit of a bolter on the night. And
yeah,
it's just that, you know, the difference between the two is probably just a ceiling, really.
yeah. That and choice. Like you pay a premium to be able to choose, and I think that some clubs did that when you saw that they like that Crows move where they moved up from 27 to 25 and paid a third round pick just to move up two selections. That's a lot to pay just to move up two picks, but you're paying to pick somebody. So that's the premium that you get at picks 8, 9, and 10 in this draft. When in reality, if I look down the order at other players that were selected and say Tanner Bruhn at 12, Heath Chapman at 14, Oliver Henry at 17, Finlay McRae at 19, Reeve McInnes at 23. Like you're starting to get into this point where you go, okay, then they're all about the same quality. And I know there were players selected in between that. Nathan O'Driscoll at 27, even if we're really stretching it out.
but
There are players picked in between that, but it's the ability to choose that you get by having those earlier selections, and they chose right for their list.
yeah, I think looking at all those selections you just read out, and it's probably the one thing I'll say that I think Essendon did well, is that I would say, like I said, Henry, um, O'Driscoll, Reef McInnes, um, Oliver Henry, Finlay McRae. These guys are all players that even though I rate them highly, uh, I don't think they would just be kind of not more of the same, but very similar to existing players on their list.
Yeah,
Like they've got Parrish, like McRae, Parrish. I mean, you've already put 4 years of development into Parrish. You need something to complement him. Like he's going to be an adequate player. I'm not saying McRae is going to be any better or any worse. We don't know, but they need just something to complement, which is why I don't mind the Archie Berg. Tanner Bruin's an interesting one. That's one I would have liked to have seen them make.
yeah, but you're right though. Like when you go Perkins over Bruin, Perkins has a bit more spark, which the Essendon midfield doesn't have, and I know that Bruin has probably more class. But there are some players in the Essendon midfield that could play that role already. So that's yeah, I do get where you're coming from. I mean, if we're looking to summarize and rate the hands or what the moves that they made on the night, I mean, I probably gonna say 5.5. It's sort of where I'm sitting, or a five.
Yeah, see, I think it's
Whereabouts are you sitting?
I think it's more of a six. I think they nailed it. I, I like even looking at Heath Chapman for example, and like I would, if I was sitting there on draft night with just about any other club, and I was faced with a selection between Reed, Cox, and Chapman, I'd probably take it Chapman every day of the week. But Essendon just don't need it. They've got Ridley, so
Yeah,
I don't mind those two selections because they're replacing older players. So look, I think for the first time in a couple of years, Essendon really knew their list and they knew it well going in here. And well, obviously the two NGA kids are great pickups for them. But yeah, they've nailed those three picks, and for their list, I think it's smashing. So I give them a six.
all right. I mean, I don't like that my history of not rating Essendon as highly as you continues, but that's okay. I mean, I really didn't mean it this time. I think that for me, it's as I said, maybe I would have liked to have seen them trade one of those selections to try to gain some value, similar to what Carlton did last year. I know that they bid on a few people first, but just turned a tens pick into a couple of things, like got a
So,
future first and something else.
yeah, look, I
That's okay.
agree. I wanted them to get creative with it, but I was thinking about it and thinking about like who had the two picks. Let's say for argument's sake, Melbourne. All right, so you slide back to where Melbourne ended up, which is like 21 and 22, and you've got those picks. But then you look at their list and what they need, and yeah, they need more than obviously what they've selected. But what are the big holes that take ages to develop? Well, like you know, what could they have done at those picks? They couldn't do it. Pick 10. Well, they couldn't have picked a 200 centimeter key position defender. Like at the end of the day, I think if they traded pick 10 for say Melbourne's two, they would have lost. They would have had to have sacrificed Archie Perkins, which I don't think was the right call.
Yeah,
I don't think there was. I mean, Melbourne picked two quite exciting players, but they're not of the same quality or ceiling as Archie Perkins. So, as much as I did want them to trade back, because I do think it's in those situations it is 90% of the time it's the right thing to do. I think given where they're listed, I don't mind them not doing it. I think if the value isn't there and the players aren't there to complement their list properly, then that's fine. The only thing they could have probably done is maybe Nathan O'Driscoll or bid on Reef McInnes or something, just to get an inside ball winner to push Shield out of that inside role. Um, but yeah, that might be the only thing I could have think of them doing. But yeah,
yeah, fair enough. Fremantle, I think that probably given the length of this episode, where we're going to have to do it in three parts, so we might get through the first six, and Frio is the last one of that. Take us through Frio.
yeah, no problem. So they started off with 12, 32, 55, 56, and 63. They had two NGA Academy kids in Brandon Walker and Joel Weston. Their first selection was Heath Chapman at 14, Nathan O'Driscoll at 27, and Brandon Walker came a bid at 50, and then the sneaky Bulldogs put a bid on Joel Weston at 55. So, I mean, looking through this, I think it's a pretty tidy effort from Freo. Heath Chapman, 193 centimetre intercepting key defender, um, plays, I guess, a similar style to a lot of our intercepting defenders. So whether it be your Sicily, your Nick Haynes, and those sorts of players, he's he really racks up the possessions. So this season in Colts, he averaged about 23 disposals, and almost 5 intercept marks a game. So you kind of look at that and you go, that's pretty handy numbers. I know it's only at Colts, so I'm not sure if he did a lot of work in the with the senior team or not. But yeah, look, I think it's a pretty handy player there for them. And again, like they, you know, they've probably got the key posts with Pierce and Hamling sorted. So having a third intercepting tool will help. Nathan O'Driscoll at 27, I feel is a steal. I think he's an excellent pick. He really had a great combine, and we speculated that the combine should push him up the list. It didn't, unfortunately. At the end of the day, he's a ball winning mid. He just goes further to complement the young developing midfield that they've got. So that's it's a really good selection for them. And then finally, Brandon Walker bid came at 50, which was incredibly late. He's a more mid-sized defender. Plays on kind of those kind of fourth or fifth players in height in the back line. Fairly good set of wheels, great jump on him. He can do some things that are pretty special. Probably just lacks a fraction of consistency. It really was a shock to me for him to go so bid on so late. So it'd be interesting to know what other clubs didn't like about him. But yeah, I think he was a really good prospect in my eyes. Joel Weston, we were talking about this a bit before the podcast. He went at 55 with the Bulldogs bidding on him. Look, had a tremendous, year, and unfortunately is just short and probably a bit light. So he, while tremendously talented and has kind of elite athletic attributes, when you kind of 173 centimeters, which is what he's listed as, I really feel like you have to have an elite skill set to go with an elite athletic profile. And I don't think he has the elite skill set, which is why he slid. So, and I use the example, Melbourne selected, who was their first selection? Names got me. Jake Bowie.
Jake Bowie,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So Jake Bowie is a very similar player, fraction taller, but has elite foot skills, not as elite athletic profile. And he went at 21, whereas Weston slid all the way to the back, and I primarily think it's got to do with his disposal. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's an
look,
interesting one.
that's not to say that he doesn't have X factor either. He
No,
does. He's got tricks and can kick goals from amazing angles, and he's got some tricks in the bag for sure. It is definitely about like a level of consistency with kick placement, field kicking and kick placement, and that was one of the things that I mean. You look at it. I know he's a bit taller than that, but you look at another small type like Cyril, and what Cyril was so good at as well was being able to spot up targets. And you look at him, even if as he was moving later into his career, when he wasn't kicking as far, he would take a mark 40 out and then he would hit a target 30 out. And he just kept improving angles. And you need to be able to do that as a smaller player. You need to be able to make life easier and get goal assists and rack them up as well. So,
yeah,
yeah, I do it.
I
Yeah.
think for Weston to make it in the AFL, so he's got elite athletic attributes, and that includes his endurance. What he's really going to have to be is that elite pressure forward. So he's just going to have to harass, use those athletic attributes that he's got to just keep harassing. And he only has to, like, he's got the IQ. He knows where to go. Like, he's got a lot of the right things, and it's just this. And every time I've watched vision of him, there's just something that keeps nagging at me that the skills aren't quite there. And but that's not to say they can't be there. I mean, I look in the AFL now, and Loney at St Kilda, I think you know he's he kicks goals, and that's why he gets a game. I don't think he's an elite kick by any stretch, but he finds the middle of the sticks, and that's all that Weston has to do to keep his spot, because he's going to be able to run all day. He's going to be able to chase people down. He's going to be able to provide the pressure, all that sort of stuff, because he's got all the right athletic attributes. But he's just going to have to make sure that he splits the middle. And as long as he keeps
Yep.
kicking goals and he doesn't kick 1 goal 5 or 1 goal 6, he'll play AFL. But that's where it is. It's a bit. I mean, I guess the player that comes to mind is Tom Bugg is a good example. Like, could run all day, but just there were games where he played for Melbourne and stuff where he'd kick 2 goals 6, like
Yeah.
and in the end that just you just get pushed out when you're doing that. So yeah, probably went
So the,
probably went too long on pick 55, but
No. I think that it's important. He was projected higher than that. They made two trades on the night as well. One of them was for points, so they gave up 46 and got 53 and 57. The other one was, and obviously they already knew that they were probably going to be selecting their NGA kids, so they had enough list spots for them. The other one was moving up, so got 27 and 59 for 30 and a future third. So moved up 3 slots, got 59 back and paid a future third. So the future third is probably, if we're guessing Frio, going to be somewhere around the 40 mark. So a 20 pick slide in the future, roughly a 20 pick slide to move up 3. So it's paying overs, but not as bad as Adelaide a few picks before that. So ultimately, the trades were okay. The selection of O'Driscoll was really solid at that pick, and that's why they traded up. So I don't know. I hate to say 5.5 again.
yeah, 5.5's your new Fox Sports A.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I feel like at least mine is close to average rather than the average being. I think we've proven this more than a couple of times that the average in ratings is a B plus or an 8 out of 10. When ours is at least trying to skew towards the middle.
Yeah. Geez, what do I give them? I love the O'Driscoll pick. They gave up a bit to get it. Got lucky with Brandon Walker and Joel Weston sliding. Chapman at 14, it's a good pick. Yeah, I think they've done well. I think it's a bit like Collingwood, where they've selected well. I'm switching between 5.5 and 5. I'll probably go 5.5. I think they've done.
Yeah,
They're probably just snagging O'Driscoll at 27, even paying a bit more to do it. I don't mind, because I think that he's a better talent than that.
yeah.
And I think that
Just
yeah,
calling it a Fox Sports A is the best thing you've ever said.
yeah, okay.
That's probably going to be the name of the episode. What is our Fox Sports A? I
Five
love
point
that.
five.
5.5. 5.5 out of 10.
Yeah,
It's not anything better than just above average. I reckon that's probably all we've got time for. We pushed the hour, even in a review of 6 clubs drafting. So I think we're going to have to make time to make another 2 of these somehow before Christmas. I don't know how we're going to do it, but
no, we will.
we'll,
We'll get it done.
we'll make time. We'll make time.
It was a really fascinating draft, and I'm gonna really enjoy in 5 years' time looking back at it, because I just think there's for the first time in a long time, like, I really sat there and was like, what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and it all kind of started with Luke Pedler, really. I mean, even though everyone's a little bit shocked that Will Phillips went at 3 with North Melbourne, I really, I think it was Pedler was the first big shock for me for the night, and then it just kind of went from there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you're right. The three was a surprise, but the top 7 were as they would have been. It
yeah,
didn't matter which order those guys were going in.
and I guess like it didn't surprise me that Hollins went at 7. He had an ACL. Like we rated Kemp as a
Yeah,
top
exactly. Yeah,
kind of what was Kemp last year. We had him top 10, and he went 17. So like sliding
easily.
kind of
I think you had him 6th. Yeah,
pushing out to
yeah,
double your projection. So I think Hollins was projected around 4 or 5. Pushing out, kind of a few picks with an ACL is not unheard of. So yeah, I think Phillips is we'll talk about North when we get there, but it's a good pick. And yeah, thanks for doing this, mate, and we'll aim to probably smash these 3 out before Christmas, and then after Christmas we'll pick up and finish our remaining list reviews, even though we kind of know where they're going, so they might be list / next season reviews for the remaining 6 clubs, before we obviously do a big review of the whole everyone's kind of progress over the preseason and how they've all gone, and especially be fascinating with all the new rules and stuff in place. Obviously, reduction of list sizes and clubs getting a bit creative with what their list balances look like. So,
sounds good, mate. Looking forward to it. I'll chat to you again soon, and thanks again, guys.
thanks, guys. See ya.
If you constantly worry that the worst is going to happen, you're not alone. 1 in 4 Australians will experience anxiety. Know when anxiety is talking. Visit Beyond Blue to start a life beyond anxiety.